Hi, my name is Natalie King. I am a student at Gulfston Jones College out of Atlanta, Georgia. I am a third quarter mortuary science student, and this is my TED Talk on the skeletal system of virtual anatomy lab. Had to kind of improvise a little bit. I was having some technical difficulties uploading my previous PowerPoint, so we're going to record it from the phone, and hopefully you can see, and I am in the background waving my hand. Okay, so like I said, this is just the skeletal system or virtual anatomy lab. Okay, and then my objective is to give a brief overview of the skeletal system. We're going to talk about structure of bones, function of bones, general information about bones, the axoskeletal system, the upper and lower extremity of the body, and then a short recap. So the structure of bones. Um, as you know, if we look at a bone, our bone is actually it's very compact, very dense, very sturdy, very hard. But honestly, when you do a cross section of the bone, you look at it, it's actually made of these circular rings. Okay, and these rings are made up of tissues, and what they do is they allow blood vessels to come in and out of the bone. So that helps with in the production of red blood, transporting red blood cells, but also transporting blood in and out the body. So you have this inner spongy layer is called the cancellous bone, and then the peritoneum is the outer hard layer of the bone. Like I said, the outer shell is the dense. Inside the bones are made of circular rings and canals for bone vessels, and then cancellous bone is the interior sponge bone, and then the peritoneum is the tough outer layer. So one of the major function of bones is support. You know, our bone helps to keep our body upright. It helps to protect our organs. As you can see, my gentleman to my right, you can see you can see how his bones are really his bones are really holding his organs in place. He's very compact. Like his heart, his liver, his lungs, everything is very compact in his body, and that's because his skeletal system is holding everything in place. Another part of the bone we're going to talk about is movement of the bone. Our bone and our muscles actually work together to help us move and propel. So something very simple as me, I'm sitting in my room. But if I wanted to get up and go get a cup of water, my bone and skeletal system is going to work together to kind of make that happen for me. That's a movement that only could take 5 to 10 seconds, really, in my mind. I don't think about it. But when we really sit and think about how our bones function and how they move and propel us, the human body is actually really fascinating and very phenomenal in what it does. So it also serves, like I said, the muscles serve as a point of the bones serve as a point of attachment for the muscles, and then it helps us move. Like when I was talking about going to get up and going on. If I had to leave where I'm at in my room to go to the kitchen to get a drink of water, those muscles and skeleton, those muscles and bones are working together to cause that to happen. Okay. Another function of bones is simply storage. When we were younger, you know, our mother gave us milk, and milk was a great source of calcium when we were younger. Calcium helps to build our bones. It's a very important mineral for our bones. If we lose a lot of calcium, we can develop what's called osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is where our body if we lose a lot of calcium in our body, our bones become very brittle when we get older. So as you can see, it's a great storage house for calcium, and it's also important that we take calcium, or we get calcium in other sources, milk and other sources. Okay, another function of bone is hemopoiesis, and hemopoiesis is simply just the manufacture of red blood cells in the body. If you look at this picture, our red blood cells have a nice round red shape. So I like to associate hemopoiesis with talking about sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell is a blood disorder, and currently in the United States it affects 1 to 3 million Americans, and about 10%, 5 to 10% of those are African Americans. And what it is the red blood cells do not have this pretty nice red shape. They're actually kind of curved, kind of like a C. And what they do is this causes upset in other when they travel to other blood vessels because they get lodged, they get stuck. And they can cause a lot of pain. So people who are sickle cell patients can have pain in their chest, their abdomen, or their joints, and it causes chronic pain and it's extreme pain. Right now, currently, there's no there's no official cure for it, but there's some scientific research that's working. That's a work in progress right now for it. But this is how I like to remember hemopoiesis, that I associate with the red blood cells, and I remember that it produces red blood cells in the body. Okay. General information: at birth, as babies, we have about 300 bones in the body. And the cool thing about our body when we're younger, our body is more of a cartilage. So that actually helps our mothers out when they're are delivering, because our bones have, because they're cartilage, they can navigate the birth canal just a little bit more easier than it would if our bones were already hard or fused together. But as we grow up, a lot of those bones, some of those bones join together, and we end up with about 206 bones in the body. Bones are grouped by the axial and the appendicular. Fun fact about bones: bones are stronger than steel. You know, when I think about a steel building in New York City, I think it can hold a lot of weight. I think of a lot of weight and a lot of pressure. And to think about our bones, we learned about the functions, the support, the protection. It's already producing red blood cells, but then on top of that, it has the capability to withstand a lot of pressure. I think our body is extremely fascinating. If you look there, I included a picture of just the bone growth. So as we're younger, our bones start off as cartilage, and then as we develop, it actually develop into spongy and compact bone. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the cranial and face bones. Okay, this is just a view of the cranial face bones. That first bone is the nasal bone, where that first arrow is pointing down to right here is our nasal bone. Next, we have our frontal bone. My apologies. My frontal bone is actually my front bone and my top of my eye sockets. Then I have my parietal bone, which are the two major, excuse me, the two larger bones in the body. And then the back one is the occipital. Then next, I'm looking at my maxilla, which is my top part of my bone right here. You can actually feel it if you kind of press down right above your lip. You can feel the ridges of the maxilla in the body. My lower jaw, my strong jawbone is called the mandible. Okay, and then I have the sphenoid bone, which is this bone right here. It's an irregular shaped bone. And then I have the ethmoid bone, which is actually in my eye socket within my head. Okay. Then I have the zygomatic process, which shows a little bit better on this frontal view of this face. The zygomatic process, I like to consider my cheekbones, so that's how I remember zygomatic process, because it helps my chunky cheeks. Okay. And then this just simply labels the bone: the frontal bone, the parietal bone, the occipital bone, mandible, maxilla, zygomatic process, ethmoid bones, nasal bone. Oh, I forgot one bone. My apologies. The temporal bone is located right here in this area. It's on both sides of our face. Like we like to say by our temples, my temples. That's where your temporal bone is located. And then this sphenoid bone. This is just another picture of the bones that we have in our body. As you can see, it's just another view of our bone. We have our frontal, our parietal, our temporal, mandible, maxilla, zygomatic process, our nose, and then our occipital bone. This view also gives us a view of the sutures in the bone. So you can see the coronal suture, the sagittal suture, and then the lamboidal suture in the back. And these sutures are important for holding our bones together. They don't really classify sutures as a bone. They're an unclassified type of bone, but they are in our body. As babies, when we're growing, they always tell you don't hit the soft plate of the baby. They be careful with the baby's head, because that is still fusing together when you're born. So you want to be very extremely careful that area is not damaged. Okay. Next, we have the ear bones. The ear bones are called the auditory ossicles bones. They're located in the middle ear. The bones' names are the malli, the incus, and the stapes. And the really cool thing about the ear bones to me, they're so tiny. They're extremely tiny. They're about 2 millimeters, I believe, long, which is they're actually one of the smallest bones in the body. Okay, next we have the hyoid bone, and this is one of my favorite bones. It is my favorite bone because I actually just learned about it. I remember this go around with anatomy. It's my favorite bone because I sing outside of not work, but I sing with my church, and so because I do, this is how I remember this bone. So the bone is actually located in the throat. It helps to attach throat and tongue muscles, and it helps with movement of that area. And it's actually right above the voice box. So that's how I like to remember it. This is another view of the hyoid bone. We have our upper extremities. These are the bones above the pelvic girdles, our arms, our hands, our chest bones, and our rib cage. So we're going to transition into that. Okay. Um, this is a view of the upper part of our body. Let's go. So, humerus bone. I like to remember the humerus bone because it's long and I like to laugh long. So it's my humerus bone. It's in my shoulders. I laugh with my whole body. So when I laugh, ha ha ha, I move my shoulders. So I like to remember that as the upper bone in my shoulders. Next we have the rib cage. You have about 7 to 8 that are attached to the actual sternum. And then we have some that are floating at the bottom. We have our vertebrae, which are classified into 3 areas: the cervical, thoracic, and the lumbar. The cervical 1 through 2, the thoracic is T1 through 12, and then the lumbar is 1 through 5. So a lot of times when you hear people talk about, like, if they've been in a car wreck, a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, I injured my L1 through 5, or I injured my T10. They kind of get real specific about which part of the spine they injured. But those 3, cervical, thoracic, and lumbar, makes up the full spine. Next, we have the sternum, which is the bone in the middle. I like to think of it like a necktie or a necklace. That's how I remember that it's located in the middle, and it attaches the ribs, keeps us organs protected. You have your clavicle bone. That's next. It's also known as the collarbone. You can actually see it on some people a little bit. You can see it poking out. Next, we have the scapula, which are these kind of like bat looking wings. Oh, well, no, sorry. I like to think of them as bat wings. That's how I remember the scapula. But it's these, our shoulders, our shoulder blades, our scapula bones. Okay? This is the radius and the ulna. Okay? This inner bone is the radius bone. And then this outer bone is the ulnar bone. Next, we have our hands, our carpals, our metacarpals, and phalanges. Our carpals are like our wrists. So my wrist, this is my carpal bone. And then I have my metacarpals, which are my middle hand finger there. And then I have my fingers, which are my phalanges. Okay, so recap. I mean, in less than 15 minutes, we just went over the first half of the body. I mean, can you name those bones we currently went over? I mean, they're very simple bones. With anatomy and studying and learning it and just being fascinated with it, repetition is the key. Like, go over these bones of the body, go over them all the time. If you're brushing your teeth, while you're brushing your teeth, you know, this is my mandible, this is my maxilla, this is my temporal bone, these are my ears, I'm listening to my music while I brush my teeth, you know, these are my auditory ossicles, you know, this is my zygomatic process. When I wash my face, I'm washing my zygomatic process. You know, you go over the parts of the bones, link it to something that you do every day, and you'll begin to remember the names for them. And essentially, this is like the name of my title, your virtual human anatomy lab. So that's the way that you can practice learning the bones of the body on your own time. Just simply link it to something that you do every day. When you're brushing your teeth or combing your hair, or when you're in the bathroom washing your hands, think about the bones that are involved in that process. So now we're going to go to the lower extremity. Okay. The lower extremity shows, this is the picture of our lower extremity. Okay, so we talked about the upper half. Now the pelvic region is actually called the ox coxa. That's our hip bone region. It's made up of our pelvic, and it's fused into like our spinal and our sacrum. And then it connects to our femur bone. Right, our femur bone. It connects to our femur bone right here.